one thing that's not a Black Mirror episode is the bright future of NA CSGO. Because actually, fully enough, that even ties to the new thing. They're doing all this initiative where they're going to like give teams like a cash incentive or something if you have an NA team instead of an EU team. So there's all these reasons, right, as to why people should start to again care. Spoiler, now that ESL's worth $1 billion, I imagine they will integrate NA more and there's been more of a league. So if we're looking to come back, the timing's perfect because all these massive roster moves have happened. And basically, the big two in NA have done the shuffle, brought in different players, and they're both going a different direction. And then you've even got, for my money, interesting squads like the Colt Project. I think people probably are sleeping on that one a little bit if you look at some of the names. And then you can even say, as an aside, if we're including Brazilians, there's obviously safe to Peyton, to Furia rather, which is again one of the most slam dunk. That's like a ROPS to phase one. It's like every person in the equation wants it. Yes, can we please have it? And thankfully it happened. Unlike the ROPS one where we took like 1 year of being blue balls. So let's just start, right? We're just going to discuss mainly the NA rosters here because I still think there's so many angles you can go on these. Like I know the names on, like for example, if you talk about the EG one, you know all the names, but do you know the names in 2022 is my question. So Vu, I want to start out with, if we go with the Evil Geniuses one first, this is the one where they teased it initially as though it was like the major winning lineup. Like, spoiler, I definitely didn't see Breeze and fucking Cirque in that major winning lineup. There was a certain guy called Skadoodle who kept getting away with it once more time. You know, why not? Why not go out the way you lived, Skadoodle? So obviously, they put together this team seemingly at the behest of Stewie 2K. People might know, as far as I know, the rumours were true. The rumour was it would be Stewie and Naf would go and would make this squad. As far as I know, Naf was the player always who was sort of more, if you just think of his past teammates, a little bit more tilted to the EG group maybe than the traditional Team Liquid clique, as it were, even though he was in that team for many years. He decided to stay instead. Maybe Elish told him, like, whatever, I'll only be passive-aggressive to you, 10% less or something. I don't know, fucking know what dealing struck. So anyway, he stayed in Team Liquid and got ranked top 20 because obviously those mean absolutely nothing now. That's how much these teams suck. Some of these teams had 2 top 20 players and they couldn't even fucking win the tournament ever. How bad are your teams anyway? That's really more about how bad HLTV is. So let's get into this angle. The new EG lineup, Vu, is Stewie 2K, his old mate autimatic come back from Valorant. He's obviously got Rush, who was sort of in wasteland of post-call. No one knew if he'd be signed to a team. In fact, there was rumours maybe he even went to this complexity lineup now, the one where they've got all the sort of lesser names, and he'd have been like, you know, sort of a veteran figure. And then they've kept the 2 players from the previous EG, Breeze and Cirque, who obviously at their peak were thought to be the star players. I imagine most people would say it as. What are your thoughts on this team? Like initial expectations, like is it a good lineup? Are you actually happy with this project? Do you see it going places?
I kind of have the same feeling about EG that I'm, spoiler, going to have about Complexity, which is that I'm not certain on the opping. I mean, I've looked into Cirque's opping recently, and the best games you can see Cirque have recently are games where he's not fucking opping. It's when he's rifling. With the op in his hand, I mean, he got out-op dueled like 3 times by Lucky. Lucky just peeking into him and killing him. Like, Cirque's opping is just lost. I don't know what the fuck happened to it. He was good for a while, and now he's just completely lost. To be fair, some of it is that when you're opping and you're trying to play a supportive opping style and your team sucks, you kind of just get smoked off and then you're left in like a 1v4. It's hard to get kills, but he's also just missing shots he shouldn't. He's also getting out-dueled in situations he shouldn't. Cirque's the real big question mark here, even more so than autimatic, who literally hasn't played CS for a while. You know, I believe more in autimatic than I do in Cirque at the moment. The other part that I don't believe in EG, I think in theory, they've got the firepower. I'm not sold on Stewie's calling. I'm really not. I think Stewie is an IGL. He can have good moments, but I also think any team with Stewie IGLing is never going to be particularly consistent. So I don't know. There's big question marks for this team, even outside of the obvious question mark, which is what is autimatic going to do?
Yes. What about you, Dos? What are the initial thoughts?
The best way I could sum up Evil Geniuses is that it's a massive parlay bet where you're hoping that everything that you've rolled the dice on comes to fruition, and you need all of them to happen for the team to be successful. And so what I mean by that is when it comes to having the stars that you need for this team to be competitive, you need Breeze and Cirque both back in form to be able to do it. And while I think there's a good chance that Breeze can return to form, because I think a lot of his dip in play probably came down to the environment that was going on in 2021, with Stanislaw being in and out of the team as the in-game leader and all the other moving parts and struggles that the team was dealing with. And I still feel like Breeze probably still can have some value as a big-name rifler. Cirque's dip in play dates all the way back to like 2020, man. Like I feel like his struggles came way before some of the issues that the team was having, throughout the year last year. So I'm a little bit more concerned about his ability to return to form, because I think you do need both of them for this team to have the firepower it needs to be competitive. Then when it comes to someone like Rush, look, again, I'm willing to accept the fact that perhaps his dip in ability came down to, again, a similar situation at Complexity where the house was crumbling down. There's a bunch of moving parts. He's living in Europe full time for like a year and a half, basically, and things were just going to shit. And I realized at the same time that Rush isn't meant to be a star. He's meant to be more of the glue guy, more of a supportive element. But there is a certain level of fragging you must achieve in that role to not be a burden on your team. And I'm concerned whether he'll be able to do that or not, because he certainly was struggling Complexity the tail end of 2021 and really throughout the entire year. So you mix that in with what kind of Vu was hinting at with Stewie as an IGL, and then the fact that autimatic fucked off from CSGO for a year. So like, who knows what type of shape he's going to be in. I'm willing to admit that he could probably work the rust off fragging wise by spending time in the server. But again, what role is he going to play? Is he going to be able to help input wise with strategy like he used to do in the past with Stewie when they were a combo in Cloud9? Again, it's a massive parlay, Thorin. I think you have to have everything hit in order for this team to run.
Yeah, my problem is, on paper, this is where I think people get tricked. On paper, the lineup looks fire. It looks like, wow, give them some time, Yeah, true. I will say the IGL aspect's the obvious big question mark you'd have anyway with the players on paper. But if you said, looking at these names on paper, this team might not have enough firepower, you'd think, no way. But the problem is, you look at the actual names individually, like you guys are doing, mate, that firepower thing just falls apart. It's a mirage. Like, Breeze has been nowhere near the superstar player he used to be when we were on LAN before the pandemic shit happened. Like, he used to genuinely, he was tracking to become like maybe even like a fucking like top 7 or 8 player in the world. Like, he was fantastic at the time. I think if you watch his game, the eye test tells you the skill's still there. He's one of the few players I didn't give up on totally. You can see sometimes even as rounds where he frags out like that, like the skill is there. My concern is what you said about Vu is about Cirque. Dude, he's the one where, as much as I thought he was a fabulously skilled player before, I don't know what happened to this guy. Like, I'm amazed he made it into this team. Like, of all the names that Breeze is picking him as the ride or die. Like, mate, he's the one you let die. You just leave him by the side of the road. Like, he doesn't look like he has the game. Dude, he's an AWP. It's the most binary role in the game. This is why my boy Kenny S isn't in the fucking scene anymore. You're either really good or you wash out the scene immediately, because it's the gun that exposes you the hardest if you don't have it anymore. So to me, I don't know why Cirque is in this team. Like, that's the gamble where they're almost just praying. It's like, Stanislaus had like some fucking Magic the Gathering aura effect that just limited this guy's skill or something. What the fuck is that? Like, I don't buy that at all. Just has 2 years off just being whack and it just comes back really good.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a little caveat here, Thorin, I mean, I'm not claiming to have like a ton of insider information here or anything like that, but if I had to speculate and kind of based on some of the rumblings that I heard, I'm pretty sure that EG did target at least 2 other oppers and didn't get them. So, and I don't know how that would have changed things as far as like the overall makeup of the team. Like you mentioned earlier yourself, Thorin, they were trying to get NAF, and I think that NAF probably dipped out because I think he was expecting Daps to stay or something like that, probably. And so I feel like EG did miss on a couple of targets they were trying to hit. And so I don't know if you want to give him leeway because of that, but I do think that this probably wasn't the the optimal 5 that they wanted.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so I kind of want to throw that wrinkle in there because I don't know if they because I know like a lot of people are trying to get that Polish guy as like NHL or something like that.
Yes,
I know OC was obviously on the market. Liquid was the one that wound up winning that one after trying to go after Munacy. So yeah, I think that might have some factored into it.
Sure. I will say, though, this is another factor I have. So another issue I have with this team is obviously the autimatic move, because there's the one upside I give autimatic, and this is actually quite a rare quality. Much like, in fact, you know what, forget the others, even the ones like Ethan who went over, his game was already going off the boil and he was moonlighting in that Valorant as far as I can tell, and then he just chose to go to Valorant. Here's what makes autimatic quite unique in my opinion. He actually didn't fall off his game. He just was in a team that wasn't very good. He didn't believe in the future and he went to Valorant. That's fine. As far as I can tell, even when his own motivation, like behind the scenes, he was one of the players I was trying to get to other teams in Flashpoint. Like, I got the vibe. He was a bit checked out on CS at the time anyway, man. I don't think he gave a fuck when it came online. So I will say in that scenario, it's not like he washed out the scene. He just wasn't good enough and now he's trying to come back. So I will give him the leeway. He could be good. The problem is, if he's only just come back, I'm not expecting it to be this month. I'd assume it's like 3 or 4 months when he has the time to get the hours in, the reps, you play a bunch of official games, you remember what the in and out, the flow of a game is like. So I would say, generally, I'm not too concerned about autimatic. Like, long term. I assume he's coming back because he cares about the project. The Stewie IGL one, I can't handle, mate, because here's what I hate. I've told this story before in the past, but I always use different players, so I'll explain it again. There's a bias that pro players have to aggressive gamble style play because they consider that being a man. It's like, wow, you're trying to win the game. You're trying to take it in your own. It's all that fucking sports culture thing of like, he took the game by the scruff of the neck and he imposed his will upon it. Like, they think that's what it is. They genuinely, no joke, if you're like the best example ever is my boy MSL. If you're just going to run like normal tactical Counter-Strike with like inputs that are obvious, you're looking for consistency, you apply this particular strat against this particular counter. If you do that, you have to be Glaive. That's the only person who's allowed to do that. Anyone who isn't Glaive, you're a pussy, you're a loser, you're a nerd who's just in the demos too much, you're boring, who would want to play stuck in your system? By the way, if anyone thinks a system is a shit style of play, go watch some Stewie 2K teams play. That's a team without a system. That's a guy who looks like he's in a POG, just calling POG strats. I'm sure they have things they work on in the game, but the way he's calling is clearly based on like what he's seen in the game in this second. Like the problem I have basically goes like this, Vu. To me, they're at best on a similar level. And I'd even argue if you look historically, I think the MSL style actually wins out slightly over that. But people talk like Stewie 2K, some like world-class IGL dude, as though he's like cracked it because as an individual player outside of the IGL, well, he's had this fabulous career and all these great accomplishments and be part of the great teams. But I've just never seen it. Like when I've looked at when he, aside from at the beginning of Cloud9, when essentially he just had to be the IGL, which I'll give him mad props for, it's never been a tier 1 IGL. Like I don't think he's ever come close to it. And I even got the vibe personally, the fact that he keeps sort of like doing it briefly in teams and then they put someone else, that's like a vote of no confidence from your own teammates there.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually, I think this is a huge NA problem. I see it in MDL as well. There's the IGL and there's the secondary caller. And secondary callers get this notion that they should be the IGL because a secondary caller, you get into a spot, you see a good read, you see the moment and you go, here's what we should do. I know the exact plan. That's what we're going to do. And it works a lot because when you have the read, when you know what you're doing, when you have like a soul read on the round, you can make that call and it's going to be right most of the time. The problem is an IGL is someone that makes the call when you don't have a read. That's what you need an IGL for. When you don't know what the right play is, like you don't have just this clear idea of exactly what's happening, you make the right call. You make a solid, static, formulaic call that's going to win most of your rounds. Secondary IGLs can't do that, but because they get in their mind, oh, well, look, all these rounds I called, and we win all these rounds when I call it, they get in their mind, oh, I can be the IGL. It never fucking works. And I would guess that this is exactly what's happened with Stewie, where he's a good secondary IGL. He gets a lot of good reads, especially in the position he gets himself in. You can make some pretty solid reads in those spots, but then when you get to the main IGL position, it's just not the same. It's a totally different scenario. And on the rounds, you don't have those reads. And that's why I think when Stewie's been calling, I think his teams have typically been highly inconsistent when he's been calling. And I would put it down to that. When he doesn't have a read, he just can't make the right calls. And as he said, he can't put together like a system, which takes years to put together a system that works effectively.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.